Hey, what is up guys, Randomonium here with a very special video that I've wanted to do for quite a while now. I think just about everybody who has played this game for long enough has gone through a period where they didn't know what champion they wanted to main. This is something that I struggled with a lot coming into Season 7, and I used the methods described in this video to determine who I should main this season. For new players, this decision can be even more daunting with a champion pool of over 130 champions and growing in League of Legends. This video is designed to help you determine the best subclass of champions for you and also to educate everyone on what subclass each champion belongs to. So the most important question we have to answer with this video is what makes you happy in League? If we can answer this question, then finding the right class, subclass, and champion for you becomes much easier. Think back to your fondest memories in League. Was it the time you landed that 5-man ult that won the game? Was it the time that you saved your carry from multiple threats? Was it the time that you outplayed that gank and got a double kill? Think about what you enjoy most about this game and why you keep hitting that play button over and over despite all the feeders and trolls and toxicity. Keep those thoughts in your mind for the rest of this video or write them down so you can refer back to them. So the first thing that we need to understand is that classes and subclasses aren't completely separated. They're all on a spectrum. So for our classes we have fighters, tanks, controllers, mages, and slayers. We also have marksmen, but they're a special case that we're going to talk about later. Each of the classes is pretty self-explanatory. Fighters are melee champions who are a mix of damage and tankiness. Tanks are the toughest champions in the game. Controllers are defensive spellcasters. Mages are offensive spellcasters. And slayers are damage-focused melee champions. Within the fighter class, we have two subclasses, divers and juggernauts. Divers have superior mobility, while juggernauts have increased tankiness. Tanks also have two subclasses, Vanguards and Wardens. Vanguards are offensive tanks, while Wardens are defensive tanks. Vanguards have superior mobility to initiate team fights, while Wardens have superior utility to keep allies alive. Controllers are separated into Enchanters and Disruptors. Enchanters focus on buffing their allies and keeping enemies away, while Disruptors specialize in crowd control, manipulating the battlefield, and damaging enemies. Mages actually have three subclasses: artillery mages, burst mages, and battle mages. Artillery mages are longer range, while burst mages typically have more crowd control and more damage than artillery mages. Battle mages have a very different playstyle from the other two subclasses, so we're going to talk about them a little bit later in the video. Finally, we have the slayers, who also have two subclasses, assassins and skirmishers. Assassins are masters of burst damage and mobility, but have virtually no defensive tools or crowd control. Skirmishers are unparalleled duelists who have a good blend of damage and mobility. This spectrum analogy isn't flawless though. For example, divers in certain ways have more in common with assassins and vanguards than they do with juggernauts and skirmishers. However, the overarching concept is solid in that many champions fall in that gray area between subclasses rather than clearly belonging to one class or the other. If you've been paying close attention, you'll have noticed that we're missing something in the middle of the spectrum. Aha, I knew it. Satan. I'm just kidding, folks. Satan isn't in the center of this spectrum. He's in your hearts and minds. What's really at the center of this spectrum are the three classes we haven't talked about yet: Marksmen, Battle Mages, and the Oddballs. These classes don't fall on the spectrum because each of them is incredibly diverse. For Marksmen, we have Marksmen that deal physical damage, we have Marksmen who deal magic damage, we have Marksmen who deal hybrid damage, we have Marksmen who rely on auto attacks, we have Marksmen who rely on spells, we have Marksmen with mobility, we have Marksmen with utility, we have Marksmen who are more duelists, we have Marksmen who are more team fighters, we have Marksmen who are more assassins. Basically, the Marksman class by itself could be its own spectrum. For Battle Mages, it's a similar story. We have Battle Mages that focus on AoE damage. We have Battle Mages who are incredibly tanky and have tons of sustain. We have Battle Mages who can chain together spells rapid fire. The common thing that unites all of the battle mages though is they like to be in the middle of the fight, dealing as much damage to as many champions as they can. The oddballs are those champions that just don't fit into any other class or subclass. These champions can feel useless in the hands of an inexperienced player or completely broken in the hands of an expert. We'll talk about each subclass more in detail once we figure out what the best subclass is for you. Each class is made up of 5 attributes: damage, toughness, crowd control, mobility, and utility. The way we're going to determine the best subclass for you is we're going to find out what you prioritize in a champion and then matching the right subclass to you. Think of it as kind of a player-champion dating service. So think for a moment and prioritize these attributes in order of what is most important to you in a champion. Each attribute has its own spectrum as well. For each attribute, you also need to decide which side of the spectrum you prefer or whether you would prefer to be more in the middle of the spectrum. Once you've prioritized each attribute and you decide where you want to fall on the spectrum for each attribute, we can determine which class is best for you. For damage, there's DPS and there's burst damage. Burst damage is better for picking off lone opponents, while DPS damage is better for team fighting, especially if the fight goes on for a longer period of time. For toughness, there's mitigation and sustain. Mitigation is the negation of damage in the form of shields or resistances. Mitigation is highly effective against burst damage. Sustain is the healing of damage either through abilities or lifesteal. Sustain is highly effective against DPS damage. For crowd control, there are 2 types, soft and hard. Hard crowd control is any form of crowd control which prevents movement, though many forms of hard CC prevent any action at all. Soft crowd control includes things like slows, blinds, and silences. For mobility, there's engage and reposition. Engages are typically longer range dashes or blinks designed to initiate a team fight that typically have longer cooldowns. Reposition abilities are either short dashes or movement speed increases that allow a champion to quickly move to a more favorable position. For utility, there's defensive utility and offensive utility. Defensive utility are spells to help keep your allies alive, such as shields, heals, or bonuses to resistances. Offensive utility are spells that increase the offensive capabilities of your allies, such as damage bonuses or attack speed buffs. At this point in the video, you should have prioritized each attribute from 1 to 5 and also decided which side of the spectrum sounds more appealing to you for each attribute. Now we're going to go through each attribute and talk about where each subclass falls on the spectrum. As we go through each attribute, make a note of which of the classes match your desired attributes. On each attribute graph, each subclass is going to be abbreviated based off of the first 3 letters of the subclass and color-coded based on what class they fall under. For example, the Assassin subclass will be abbreviated ASS because those are the first 3 letters of Assassin, and also because you're an ass if you main Assassin. Furthermore, you can see that both the Assassins and the Skirmishers are in red because they both fall under the Slayer class. The first attribute we're going to talk about is damage. In the horizontal axis, you'll see that the subclasses on the left side of the graph deal more DPS damage, while the subclasses on the right side deal more burst damage. How far up each class is on the vertical axis indicates how much damage they normally do compared to the other subclasses. Traditionally, Marksmen, Skirmishers, Burst Mages, and Assassins deal the most damage in the game and are considered to be the primary damage dealers. Battle Mages, Juggernauts, Disruptors, Divers, and Artillery Mages can also deal significant damage, but typically not as much as the classes above them. Finally, near the bottom we have the Vanguards, the Wardens, and the Enchanters. These classes can still deal decent damage, but they aren't known for being damage dealers. However, it is really important to note that this is the League of Damage, and that any class can deal significant amounts of damage if played accordingly. I've seen plenty of games where a Vanguard or a Warden or an Enchanter has hard carried and led our team in damage. So if damage is your number 1 priority, don't count out the other classes that deal less damage just yet. The next attribute we're going to talk about is Toughness. Subclasses that favor mitigation are on the left, while subclasses that favor sustain are on the right. The classes with the most toughness are Wardens, Vanguards, Juggernauts, and some Battle Mages. Battle Mages are particularly difficult to characterize in regards to toughness because some Battle Mages are incredibly tanky while others are quite fragile. Divers are right beneath these classes and can be just as tanky as the tank classes depending on what items you get. Skirmishers are right below divers and are really hard to gauge in terms of toughness because their defenses are incredibly situational and entirely dependent on the skill of the player and the skill of his opponents. Beneath Skirmishers we have Enchanters and Marksmen. While these champions aren't particularly tanky, they do possess some mitigation or sustain abilities, Enchanters mainly in the form of shields and Marksmen in the form of lifesteal. At the bottom we have Burst Mages, Disruptors, Artillery Mages, and Assassins who possess hardly any forms of mitigation or sustain. For crowd control we can see that the graph is greatly skewed towards hard crowd control. The kings and queens of crowd control are champions in the Disruptor, Enchanter, Vanguard, Warden, and Burst Mage subclasses. Immediately beneath them are the divers who also possess significant CC. Underneath the divers we have battle mages and artillery mages, and beneath them we have juggernauts and skirmishers. Marksmen are incredibly hard to classify when it comes to crowd control because the class is extremely diverse. Some marksmen have soft CC, some marksmen have hard CC, and some marksmen have no CC. At the bottom we have the assassins who possess very limited forms of crowd control. Next up we have mobility. In this category, assassins are far and away the most mobile champions, possessing significant engage and reposition mobility. Beneath them are vanguards, divers, and skirmishers who either possess great engage mobility or great reposition mobility, but not both. Wardens are next in terms of engage mobility, while marksmen are next in terms of reposition mobility. Near the bottom we have enchanters and juggernauts who don't possess much mobility but who do typically have ways to speed up their movement for short periods of time. At the bottom we have battle mages, burst mages, disruptors, and artillery mages. There are some champions within these subclasses that have some mobility, but as a whole, these subclasses are the least mobile. And finally we have utility. In this attribute, enchanters and wardens are the undisputed champions, possessing significantly more utility than any other subclass in the game. There are a few champions within the marksman, disruptor, burst mage, skirmisher, and battle mages subclasses who possess some forms of utility, which is why those classes aren't at the bottom, but not every champion within those subclasses has utility. Champions within the Vanguard, Diver, Artillery Mage, Juggernaut, and Assassin subclasses do not possess any utility. Alright, so now that we've gone through all 5 of the attributes, you should have at least one subclass that matches your desired attributes. For example, I like to engage, I like to be tanky, I like to do decent damage with at least a little bit of crowd control. Based on my responses, Vanguards or Divers would be a good choice for me. You may not have a 100% match, but you should have at least one subclass that checks most of your boxes. If you can't determine the best subclass for you, leave a comment with your priorities and I'll try to help you out. If you're curious what is the best champion for you within the subclasses that you've chosen, that is something we will address in my future videos, because if I tried to cover it in this video, the video would be about 10 times longer than it already is. For every single subclass, I will be doing a dedicated video talking about what makes each champion unique within that subclass. If there's a particular subclass video that you want me to do first, then please leave a comment below. For now, I'm going to end this video by briefly going through each of the subclasses, let you know what defines that subclass, what champions make up that subclass, and what is the most common role for each champion within that subclass. Pretty much any champion can be played in multiple roles, but I'll just go over the most common role for each champion. If you're only interested in learning about one or two of the subclasses and you don't want to watch the rest of this video, I've time-stamped each subclass in the video description below. First up we have the Divers. Divers at their core are jack of all trades. They have damage, they have tankiness, they have crowd control, and they have mobility. However, they aren't amazing in any one area. The true strength of divers is that they are extremely versatile and can adapt their build for whatever their team needs or whatever best counters the enemy team. Common divers played in top lane include Aatrox, Camille, Irelia, Pantheon, Renekton, and Wukong. Common divers played in the jungle are Elise, Evelynn, Hecarim, Jarvan, Lee Sin, Nocturne, Vi, Xin Zhao, and Warwick. A common diver played in the mid lane is Diana. Next we're going to talk about Juggernauts. Juggernauts are known as the raid bosses of League of Legends. They are the 1v2, 1v3, even 1v5 kings. They have very high damage and tankiness and are extremely difficult to take down due to their sustain. However, they lack mobility and are easily kited. Juggernauts are best when the enemy team tries to engage onto them, but they struggle against long-range comps with crowd control. Juggernauts commonly played in top lane are Darius, Dr. Mundo, Garen, Alawi, Mordekaiser, Nasus, Trundle, and Yorick. Juggernauts commonly played in the jungle are Olaf, Shyvana, Udyr, and Volibear. Next we're going to move on to the tank classes, and the first tank class we're going to talk about are the Vanguards. Vanguards thrive on chaos and excel in the thick of a team fight. What makes Vanguards unique is their terrifying engage, which is usually on their ultimate, which typically provides AoE damage, AoE crowd control, or both. Vanguards commonly played in the top lane are Gnar, Malphite, and Sion. As a special note, Gnar is only considered a Vanguard when he's in Mega form. In Mini form, he's considered a Marksman. Vanguards commonly played in the jungle are Amumu, Gragas, Rammus, Rek'Sai, Sejuani, Skarner, and Zac. Finally, Vanguards that are commonly played as supports are Leona and Nautilus. The second tank class is the Wardens. Wardens are unique because of their combination of tankiness, crowd control, and utility. Wardens are masters at protecting their allies, and while they can be decent at engaging, they usually don't have the same engage potential as a Vanguard. Common Wardens played in the top lane are Maokai, Poppy, and Shen. Common Wardens in the jungle are Ivern and Nunu. A common Warden in the mid lane is Galio. And common Wardens played as support are Alistar, Braum, Tahm Kench, and Thresh. Additionally, Galio is considered a hybrid battle mage. We're now moving on to the controllers, and the first controller class we're going to talk about are the Enchanters. What makes Enchanters unique is their amazing ability to keep allies alive. While many classes are masters of death, the Enchanters are the masters of life, and their ability to keep their squishy damage dealers alive can single-handedly win a team fight. All members of the Enchanter subclass are most commonly played as supports. Champions in the Enchanter subclass are Bard, Janna, Karma, Lulu, Nami, Sona, Soraka, Taric, and Zillion. Additionally, Karma is considered a hybrid battle mage, and Taric is considered a hybrid warden. Next up we have the Disruptors. What makes Disruptors unique is that they can lock down large areas of the battlefield, either preventing movement through that area or making movement through that area extremely painful. Disruptors commonly seen in the top lane are Heimerdinger and Teemo. Disruptors commonly seen in the mid lane are Anivia, Orianna, and Talia. Disruptors commonly seen as supports are Morgana and Zyra. Additionally, Teemo is considered a hybrid marksman, and Morgana is considered a hybrid enchanter. Moving on to the mages, the first subclass we have are the artillery mages. Artillery mages have the longest range in the game and can take down squishy targets before they even get into the fight with well-placed skill shots. They are excellent for sieging and also have great wave clear. An artillery mage commonly played in top lane is Jace. Artillery mages commonly played mid lane are Vel'Koz, Xerath, and Ziggs. And an artillery mage commonly played as AD carry is Varus. Additionally, Jace is considered a hybrid skirmisher, and Varus is considered a hybrid marksman. The second mage subclass is the burst mages. Burst mages are known for their combos, which can CC a target and then delete them from the battlefield. They are the ultimate combination of crowd control and burst damage. The only burst mage that's commonly played in top lane is Lissandra. The rest of the burst mages are commonly played in mid lane. They are Ahri, Annie, Brand, Lux, Syndra, Twisted Fate, Veigar, and Victor. Additionally, Brand is considered a hybrid battle mage, and Lux is considered a hybrid artillery mage. The final mage subclass are the battle mages. This is a really diverse class, but what defines them as a whole is their shorter range but surprising damage. Some of the battle mages also have a surprising amount of tankiness as well. Battle mages typically played in the top lane are Gangplank, Rumble, and Swain. Battle mages played in mid lane are Aurelion Sol, Cassiopeia, Karthus, Malzahar, Ryze, and Vladimir. Additionally, Gangplank is considered a hybrid skirmisher. Alright, let's move on to the Slayers. The first Slayer subclass are the Assassins. Assassins are a terrifying combination of mobility and burst damage that strikes fear into pretty much every squishy champion in the game. When ahead, Assassins can feel unstoppable. When behind, though, they can feel useless. An assassin that is commonly played in top lane is Akali. Assassins that are commonly played in the jungle are Kha'Zix, Nidalee, Rengar, and Shaco. And then assassins played in mid lane are Fizz, Kassadin, Katarina, LeBlanc, Talon, and Zed. Additionally, Nidalee is considered a hybrid artillery mage. Next up are the Skirmishers. Skirmishers are unparalleled duelists. They have very high damage and good mobility. However, what really defines Skirmishers are their conditional defenses. Every Skirmisher has at least one ability which, when used properly, can make them feel extremely difficult to kill. However, if you use that ability improperly, a Skirmisher can be killed very easily. Skirmishers played in the top lane are Fiora, Jax, Kled, Riven, Tryndamere, and Yasuo. A Skirmisher commonly played in the jungle is Master Yi, and a Skirmisher commonly played in mid lane is Echo. Alright, let's now talk about Marksmen. Marksmen are the largest and arguably the most diverse class in League of Legends. What ultimately defines Marksmen, though, is their ability to do consistent DPS from range. However, Marksmen vary wildly in how much range, mobility, tankiness, sustain, crowd control, and utility they have. Marksmen commonly played in top lane are Gnar, Kayle, and Quinn. Marksmen commonly played in the jungle are Graves and Kindred. Marksmen commonly played in mid lane are Azir, Corki, and Kog'Maw. The majority of the marksmen, though, are played as AD carry. Those marksmen are Ashe, Caitlyn, Draven, Ezreal, Jhin, Jinx, Kalista, Lucian, Misfortune, Sivir, Tristana, Twitch, and Vayne. Additionally, Gnar is considered a Vanguard in Mega form, Kayle is considered a hybrid Enchanter, Quinn is considered a hybrid Assassin, Graves is considered a hybrid Skirmisher, Azir is considered a hybrid Disruptor, Ezreal is considered a hybrid Artillery Mage, Jhin is considered a hybrid Burst Mage, and Twitch is considered a hybrid Assassin. Like I said, the Marksman class is extremely diverse. This brings us to our final class, the Oddballs. These guys are the redheaded stepchildren of League of Legends, but they probably think of themselves as the champions who are too cool to be part of any class or subclass. Each of these champions have very, very different playstyles than other champions, and traditionally require a lot of experience to be played competently. In top lane, our oddballs are Cho'Gath, Kennen, Singed, and Urgot. In the jungle, our oddball is Fiddlesticks, and at support, our oddball is Blitzcrank. And that's it. We're done with all the classes. If you're still here and you've watched the entire video, then I applaud you. As I said earlier, if you still don't know what subclass is right for you, please leave a comment with your priorities and I'll help you out as best I can. Additionally, I plan on doing separate videos for every subclass, so if there's a particular subclass that interests you, leave a comment and I'll try to prioritize that subclass in my future videos. This video took a considerable amount of time to create, so if you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button. If you enjoy the content on the channel and you want to see more of my videos in the future, please subscribe. I hope you all have a fantastic day. This is Randomonium, signing off.